Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Cyr looked at Bell's face as he stepped through the door to the hostess that morning and instantly knew something was very wrong. The happy-go-lucky smile he always wore was gone. He looked tired and rather depressed. As she gazed at his soul, she was disappointed to see how muted it looked. Bell's soul wasn't shining like it normally did, the bright light from it was gone. Something, she didn't know what yet, but something had crushed his spirit. She knew that people's souls would waver and change according to their life experience and mood, but to see the soul she adored so much in obvious pain made her heart ache. She looked a little closer as he stepped towards the bar, carrying the grimoire she had given him a few days ago. He was back in human form, the full moon had ended the previous night. As she gazed deeper, she almost gasped in horror. Something had tainted him, and it wasn't his war-rabid bloodlust. Deep in Bell's soul a small dark flame had begun to burn, just like the one she saw in the Sword Princess. Bell, she called out as he approached the counter she was cleaning at that moment. Whatever has happened to you? Bell looked at her with eyes that expressed pain and regret. He tried to speak for a moment. He placed the book down on the bar and slumped onto one of the bar stools. I found out what happened to my parents, he said quietly, looking down, not wanting to meet her eyes at that moment. Your parents? Cyr asked, urging him to continue. They were murdered, Cyr, he said with a sob as tears began to flow from his eyes again. After he had rested from recovering from his mind down, he had spent the last 2 days rampaging through the dungeon, trying to work through his anger and grief. Now back in his human form, his anger was greatly diminished, the rabbit rage wasn't dominating him. He had started to grieve the parents he never knew that morning, and the grief had hit him like a ton of bricks. What? Cyr gasped and covered her mouth in shock. Bell nodded, still not looking up at the girl. They? He paused for a moment, trying to gather his thoughts. They were members of Zeus Familia. 15 years ago. He wiped his eyes, the tears had begun to sting. He continued speaking, but in a very quiet voice. Freya had them executed. Cyr took a step back at that moment as she watched the black flame in his soul flare up as he spoke her true name. What have I done? She asked herself at that moment. She thought Bell was her meant-to-be, her soulmate, her otter. All her hopes and dreams for the young man in front of her shattered at that moment. She had destroyed him before she even had a chance to know him. The black flame that burned was her fault. The dullness his soul showed now was her fault. She didn't know what to say or what to do. She was an all-powerful goddess, but right here and now, there was nothing she could do. She couldn't turn back time and prevent her previous actions. She felt broken and alone at that moment. But, still, despite what she had done, there was a grief-stricken young man sitting in front of her with tears rolling down his face. She walked around the bar and drew him into a hug. Bell. That is a dreadful thing to have happened to you. I'm so sorry. It's... Bell sobbed into her shoulder as she tried to comfort him. It's not your fault, Cyr. Yes, it is. Cyr screamed at herself. It's all my fault. I sabotaged myself and I didn't even know it. Bell. What will you do? I don't know. He answered as he pulled back and wiped his eyes. I was in my rabbit form when I found out. All I wanted to do was hunt down Freya Familia and Freya herself. I was so angry at her. Why? What had my parents ever done? Failed to kill the dragon? Were they just victims in a petty goddess's power struggle? He shook his head. He didn't know what to do. Why Cyr? Why would she do something like that? Cyr didn't know what to say for a moment or two. She had his answer, she knew exactly why she had given the order. The few members of Zeus' familia that had survived the fight had tried to return to Orario. She had ordered her familia to kill any remaining members to make sure that Zeus lost all of his familia and would be cast out of the city. It had been nothing more than a power play at the time. She had no idea that it would come back to bite her so hard. "I don't know Bell," she lied to him. "The whims of a goddess can be hard to understand. We are just playthings to them. Our lives flash by in a split second compared to their existence." Bell took a deep breath and tried to compose himself. "Hard to understand," he muttered to himself for a second. "I'm going to make her understand. Make her feel the grief that I do. I'm not strong enough yet. But slowly. As I grow. As I get stronger. I'm going to show her what it's like. She stole my parents from me." His voice grew louder and more confident as he spoke. "I'm going to take her children from her. I'm going to make her feel the pain. The pain that I feel." Seer watched as the dark flame grew in his soul at those words, and nothing could break her heart more. Here she stood, comforting the man she loved, the man who was supposed to be her love for all eternity, and he was promising her as much pain as he could. She understood, she really did. As she hugged the man whose mind and soul she had shattered, she couldn't help but wonder if she deserved the suffering that he was promising her in that moment. Aiz stood in the midst of the 10th floor and watched Bell as he fought. As she had journeyed to the dungeon today for a solo run, she had seen Ina at the entrance to the Babel Tower. Aiz had dropped by to say a polite hello when she saw her, but Ina was rather worried. She said she had overheard some adventurers planning to jump Bell and mug him. She had shot off into the dungeon as fast as she could. She wasn't running to protect Bell though. She knew full well he would be able to handle a bunch of low-level adventurer thugs. She wasn't concerned about him at all. What she was worried about was Bell going on a rampage. As they had left the dungeon hand in hand the other day, he had spoken a little about his race and his bloodlust when in rabbit form. He had explained that his race had been hunted to extinction due to people's fear of their rampages. Aiz was running to protect others in the dungeon. She hoped she would be able to calm Bell in that state if he got out of hand. She wasn't sure if she could, but after the purring and the face rubbing the other day, she had a little confidence that it was possible. Doubly so after Bet's embarrassing comments. That, and deep down, she wanted to see Bell. She wanted to watch him fight, and she really wanted to have the adorable bunny in her lap again and to make him purr. She stood and watched. Bell was in rabbit form, but he was in control for now. However, he was surrounded by orcs. Someone had thrown monster lures everywhere, and it was drawing every monster on the floor to him. He didn't need any help though, he was tearing through the orcs like it didn't matter. She quickly removed the monster lures, throwing them as far away as she could, and went back to admiring Bell. His method of fighting was brutal, but efficient. He went for one-hit kills wherever he could. His two signature moves were either attacking from behind and ripping their throats out, like he had done with the Minotaur, or a frontal attack where he opened both jugular veins with his claws. She sought his firebolt magic for the first time as well, marveling at the fact that Bell had chantless magic like hers. It made her feel even closer to him. Brutal, but very efficient. But after one of his leaps, the dirt under his feet shifted and he stumbled. Due to the volume of orcs around him, he took a few hits as he tried to get back on his feet. Then it happened. She saw the humanity disappear from his eyes and he turned into a raging beast. He let out a haunting howl and started tearing into the orcs at twice the pace. In less than 30 seconds, Aiz saw him kill around 50 orcs, ripping and tearing as he went. Finally ripping the throat out of the last orc, he sat for a moment and observed all around him. He scratched an ear with a hind leg, causing Aiz to giggle. But then he tore off to the 9th floor. Aiz thought that was odd. Bell had explained that at the end of a rampage, if all threats were removed, he would always pass out with a mind down. Something about the cost of being berserk he had explained. It took a massive toll on the body and mind and could leave him rather vulnerable. If he was still awake, that meant he felt there was another threat. Suddenly worried he might have smelled adventures nearby, she ran after him as quickly as she could. Lily sobbed quietly to herself as the killer ants circled around her tiny body. She hated herself at that moment. She had betrayed Master Bell, the only person who had ever treated her decently. She hated how weak she was, she hated the fact her life was always dictated by others, the choices were made for her and she never got to choose. She hated herself as Belle had given her a slim hope that it was possible for her to change, to be someone other than the lonely downtrodden Lily that she was. She had been so conflicted about Belle. He was so naive. He hadn't realized she had stolen his knife once, but he knew it this time. If he survived the orcs, which Lily was rather confident that he would do, she would have to hide from him as well now. She'd only wanted to buy her freedom, to leave the Soma Familia and escape the city, never to return, but even now, with her life savings stolen, even that hope had died. All Lily had now was death by killer ant and her regrets. She hated herself for being so weak, but more so than that, she hated herself for betraying Master Bell. She could finally die. It was all over. She could go to the gods. The tiny girl whom no one would save, the girl who was worth nothing, the lonely girl. She could rest at last. A white flash thundered into the room. It was far too quick for her eyes to follow. All she could see was a blur of white that bounced off the walls, floor, and ceiling as it ping-ponged its way across the room. Killer ants exploded in ash as it passed, the magic stones clinking as they dropped to the floor. Lily watched with her mouth open in shock. What was this thing? The last killer ant died and the white flash landed on top of her. She was pinned at the shoulders by the creature on top of her, and the creature roared in her face, making her wet herself in utter terror. Looking at the thing on top of her, it was a giant rabbit. It wasn't a needle rabbit, nor one of the Almiraj, it also had clothes and armor on, confusing the very scared little prom girl. The rabbit beast was growling at her, staring straight into her eyes. The growl was deep and guttural, bring out Lily's primal fear of beasts in the dark. If she was terrified before, then she didn't know the words for the dread she felt now. But the rabbit beast was sniffing at her. Its nose got right into her face and sniffed. Then it sniffed her hair. The creature pulled back, but it had stopped growling. Then, to her utter shock, in a deep gravelly voice the rabbit beast spoke. Lily, it seemed to growl. Then it jumped back, releasing her from its grip. She looked up and saw the rabbit beast sitting a few feet away from her. It took a moment to clean its whiskers, then groom its ears, all while staring at her. Then its eyes rolled up into the back of its head, showing only the whites, and the beast collapsed onto the floor. For a moment its body was surrounded by the same black smoke that appeared when Lily used her magic. Then Belle was there. Belle was that creature? Lily didn't know what to do. She ran over to the boy and checked him for injuries. A few bruises was all he had. She rolled him over onto his side, the recovery position, so he wouldn't swallow his tongue or choke if he vomited. All adventurers received some first aid training from the guild when they sign up, so Lily at least knew this basic move. Checking his eyes, she understood what had happened. Belle had a mind down. Now she panicked a little. She could probably carry Belle back up to the surface with her Artel assist skill, but she wouldn't be able to fight if she did. They would be attacked by monsters for sure. Not knowing what to do, she tried in vain to wake Belle up. Master Bell, please wake up. She sobbed as she shook him. And that was the state Aiz found them in a few moments later. She walked over to Bell and checked his pulse and pulled back his eyelids. Mind down, she muttered to herself. Looking at Lily, she asked, "Who are you?" Lily is Master Bell's supporter, Miss Wallenstein. Aiz nodded. She wasn't surprised the prom girl knew who she was. Everyone did. Lily noticed Aiz was stroking Belle's hair, making her rather surprised. Did the Sword Princess know Belle? Do you know Master Bell, Miss Wallenstein? Aiz replied in her stoic manner. Lily blinked, confused. Just call me Aiz. Belle and I are acquainted. Lily wasn't sure what she meant, but she seemed to care for Belle, so she didn't ask any more questions about their relationship. Instead, she asked what they should do. "Can you carry him? If you can, he'll escort you through the upper floors." Yes, Lily can carry Master Bell, she has the supporter's skill. Aiz knew what she meant. She stood up and drew her sword, ready to escort Lily and Bell. Then a thought struck her. "Do you know where he lives?" Lily did. She had followed Bell home once to find this out. Lily wanted to make sure she knew as much as she could about the strange adventurer with a kind heart. He didn't really seem to belong in Rio to her. "Then we should take him home. He might sleep for days. Last time, it was a mind down due to magic use, but this is down to a rampage." "Miss Aiz," Lily saw something strange. Aiz raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. "Is what?" Lily struggled to get the words out. "Is Master Bell a giant rabbit?" she suddenly shouted. Aiz just giggled a bit. "Hasn't he shown you yet?" Lily shook her head. "When he saved me just now, he was a giant rabbit. He even cleaned his ears afterwards." Aiz giggled again. Bell did that without thinking. She had noticed it several times on their walk together out of the dungeon. Her heart melted at the cuteness every time she saw it. "Well, it's not for me to say. He should be the one to tell you." Aiz wondered why Bell hadn't shown the supporter girl. If he had kept it secret, it must have been for a reason. Bell began to awaken. Again, someone was stroking his hair. His first thought is that he hoped it was Aiz. Then the memory hit him. The last thing he can recall is getting hit by one of the orcs. He can't remember anything past that point. He found it always took a while before his full memory came back after a rampage. Knowing he might be in danger, he snapped his eyes open. But there she was again. Aiz was smiling down at him. He gave her a smile. "You're awake." She smiled back. Bell blinked a few times and looked around, trying to work out where he was. He quickly realized he was at home. He was lying on the sofa with his head in Aiz's lap. Hestia and Lily were sitting on the bed. The most important thing was that everyone was safe. He relaxed from the alert state and calmed a bit. Aiz smiled. "If you change, I'll stroke your ears again." Bell didn't even respond. The temptation of ear strokes was too much, so he just changed there and then. "Good boy," Aiz said simply. She stroked his ears and he closed his eyes and started purring. It felt divine, just like it did before. Hestia wanted to freak out and push Aiz off of him, but she didn't. Whenever she had tried to touch Bell's rabbit ears, he growled at her. But he was purring. Actually purring. It was the cutest thing she'd ever seen. "How are you doing that, Aiz? Whenever I try and stroke Bell, he just growls at me." Aiz went red with embarrassment. She knew full well why Bell let her touch him, but did not want to admit it. She tickled him under the chin, causing him to purr louder, then she stroked his cheek again. Bell responded the same way he did before, nuzzling at her face and purring loudly. As he nuzzled, Aiz giggled and giggled at the attention. Hestia did freak out this time. "Bell, what are you doing to that girl?" But Bell just threw her an angry glare and gave her a growl. Hestia backed down straight away. Right, bloodlust, rampage. "I'm sorry." But deep down she was actually very scared. If Bell's skill was real, no, she doesn't want to think about the possibility. Once Bell felt he had scent marked Aiz enough, not on a conscious level, purely out of instinct, he settled down back in her lap. After a while and still purring, he asked what happened. "Last I remember I was fighting those orcs." "You rampaged," Aiz commented. "Oh. Not good. I didn't hurt anyone, did I?" "No. Master Bell saved Lily's life." "Will Master Bell please tell Lily what Master Bell is?" Bell turned his head in A's lap to look at Lily inside. He changed back into a human. It was far easier to talk when he's human. He tried to lift his head, but Ace just pushed him back down onto her lap. He didn't resist. She kept stroking his hair. He suddenly realized he had just growled at Hestia. Sorry for growling, goddess, he wanted to say he didn't mean to, but that wasn't true. Hestia just nodded, accepting the apology. Master Bell is a were-rabbit, Lily. Hestia informed the prom girl. Why did Master Bell hide this from Lily? Bell was a bit surprised she'd ask. Isn't it obvious, Lily? Lily had an unhappy face. Perhaps Bell was not as naive as she believed he was. She took off her hood showing her dog ears, then cancelled her magic. By the stoke of midnight's bell. Hestia gasped seeing the magic, but Ace just raised an eyebrow. Lily is a liar and a thief. Master Bell saw right through Lily, didn't he? Bell nodded. But Lily, deep down, you don't want to be, do you? Somewhere in there is a decent person who was never given a chance to be a decent person. Isn't that the truth? Why did you save Lily? Did I save you, Lily? I don't remember. I thought you were going to bite my head off, Master Bell. Your growling was so scary, but... She took a breath. Bell roaring in her face had terrified her so much she had wet herself, it wasn't something she wanted to recall. Master Bell sniffed Lily and knew Lily, even when he had bloodlust. Lily thought Master Bell would kill Lily, but Master Bell just sat down, cleaned his ears and passed out. She shouted at him, exasperated. That's interesting. I don't remember a thing. I'm really glad I didn't hurt you though, Lily. I couldn't have forgiven myself if I had. Like Bet said in the pub. Aiz said cryptically. I can control it? She nodded, looking down at his face on her lap. How do you get so strong so fast, Bell? You have only had your Felna for a month now and you can cope fine on level 10. That isn't possible. Master Bell is very strong. Is Master Bell really level 1? Lily wanted to know too. I'm not strong at all. Bell complained. I'm really weak still. I need to get much stronger than this. I don't even have anyone to teach me or train with. It'll never get better like this. Shall I train you? Aiz asked him. You would do that? Aiz smiled. If you let me stroke your ears. Bell couldn't say no to that. Spending time with Aiz, training, and ear strokes? That sounded like heaven to him. He nodded. Then please train me, Aiz. 6 a.m. tomorrow. Meet me on the east wall. Hestia wanted to object, but seeing the two together on the sofa like that? It was obvious. They were already head over heels in love with each other, but neither had realized it yet. Bell had his happy smile back too, and she hadn't seen that in a while. It had been a few weeks since Bell had found out Freya had killed his parents. He hadn't smiled since then. This was the first time she'd seen him smile again, and she couldn't take that away from him. If Aiz helped heal Bell's broken heart, it was best for everyone. Besides, Hestia had eternity to find him again. Bell only had these moments in this life which would be erased when he died and his soul was cleansed in heaven. She couldn't deny him any happiness. She had lost and she knew it. Aiz suddenly stood. It's late. I must go. And she walked off just like that, without saying goodbye. Bell wasn't surprised, it was the girl's nature to be like that. Bell watched her go, he couldn't take his eyes off of her. As he turned his head back, he saw Lily there, holding the Hestia knife in front of her. She handed it to him. Lily should go too. Goodbye, Master Bell. Before Bell had a chance to respond, she ran out the door and vanished into the night. As she ran, Lily burst into tears. Bell didn't see Lily in the next 2 days. She was nowhere to be found when he waited for her in the mornings. He was worried about her, but he felt he would see her again. Then one morning, Lily heard a deep gravelly, but sort of familiar voice behind her. Supporter-san, Supporter-san. Are you looking for an adventurer? Lily turned around. There stood a person. Black cloak, hood covering his head, scarf across his face with red goggles on. Are you confused? The deep voice said. This is a pretty simple situation, you know. An adventurer in need of a supporter has come to you, asking to buy your services. Who are you? Lily asks, utterly confused. Those were her words. This person knew her. You'll see once we get into the dungeon, Lily. I can't show my face right now. It's full moon. And I want to get down there quickly. My ears hurt being squashed like this. It clicked in Lily's mind who it was. Master Bell? He nodded. I was wondering if you'd be willing to prowl the dungeon with me. He held out his hand. Lily took it. Yes. Please take Lily with you. Bell and Aiz enjoyed sparring for the last few days. As Bell could maintain human form for the first 4 days of training, he concentrated on learning how to use his weapons correctly, although Aiz wasn't the best teacher in the world as she had trouble explaining herself. All Bell could really do was watch her moves and try and copy them, or figure out his own counters to them. Each day ended with a half-hour session of ear stroking. Aiz had experimented a bit with Bell. If she didn't touch his cheeks, he wouldn't scent mark her. No matter how loud she got him to purr, he still avoided looking into her eyes, just like when he was human. If anything, when they were face to face she could almost see him blushing under his fur, which she found rather odd. However, if she stroked his cheek, it seemed to awaken a desire in him and he would nuzzle her face relentlessly. As she rather enjoyed the attention, she made sure to always stroke his cheeks. One of the days, she accidentally found he rather enjoyed having his poof of a tail stroke and gently pulled while he was nuzzling her. His purr would get even louder if she did that. She found it all very amusing, but also very confusing. She really didn't understand her feelings for Bell at all. The last few days were full moon, so Bell was in rabbit form. Aiz could tell the difference from their first clash. It was like Bell had jumped a few levels in speed and strength. She estimated him to be fighting at around mid-level 3 in strength and speed. She also noticed he was much more aggressive in combat and a lot less controlled. It was much more like fighting a monster rather than a man. Though that depended on how he mixed his styles. Fighting with claws only was very animalistic, but that was to be expected since he was fighting with his natural weapons. Aiz quickly learned to watch out for his kicks. Not only were his legs massively strong, but those claws were lethal weapons. He would kick a lot less when fighting with weapons as he was fighting with more rational thought than animal instinct. When fighting with weapons, his style was more of a mix of both his forms, however that brought as many flaws as it did benefits. His footwork was all over the place due to backwards knees, which was a compromise. He couldn't move as he would normally, causing him to misstep, but at the same time, fighting with weapons against a person with backward knees meant Aiz found him almost impossible to predict. His feet would never move where she expected them to. Bell's fighting style became so difficult to predict as he began to master his body that Aiz found herself off guard for several attacks which seemed to come out of nowhere. She was very impressed by the end of their time together. She had an expedition to go on and would be away for some time. But Bell didn't get as much training as he would have liked while in rabbit form. Aiz couldn't help but knock him out whenever she had the chance so she could pet her bunny. Bell didn't complain though. How could he? He'd fallen so hard for Aiz since she woke him up from the first mine down. And ear strokes from Aiz were the best thing in the world. Bell had been happy all week. Hestia was rather relieved to see him back to his old self after she had worried about him so much. Aiz had to know. How did he grow so fast? They had only been training for a week, but Bell's rate of growth was outstanding. She was pretty sure he was close to level 2 now and was probably ready to level up. It had taken her a year to get to level 2, but Bell was almost there after a month. She couldn't understand it. She had to try asking him again. It was the end of the training session and their last day together before she would go on the Loki Familia expedition. As usual, Bell was lying on her lap having his ears stroked. Bell. You have grown so fast this week. What is it that motivates you so much? It was the wrong question to ask Bell as he was currently in war rabbit form. Aiz didn't know it, but for the past few weeks Bell had been mourning the parents he never knew. He stopped purring and sat up with an angry expression on his face, but he was not looking at Aiz. He was staring at the top of the Tower of Babel. My parents were killed, Aiz, when I was a newborn. I never had a chance to know them. Aiz didn't know what to say. Bell lost it though, his despair and rage at Freya overwhelmed him in his rabbit state and he started to lose his rationality. He stood up, his fists clenched, his own claws digging into the palms of his hands making blood drip onto the stone floor. Freya had them executed. He screamed at the top of his voice. And I'm going to kill her. Aiz had to calm him down now she realized. It's her fault he's angry and if he got any worse, there is no telling what he might do. He started growling very loudly, so she grabbed him and drew him into a hug. Bell. Calm down. Listen to me. But Bell just growled. He didn't calm, but he stopped getting angrier. She pulled back slightly so she is face to face with him and stared into his eyes. Bell. I understand. My parents were killed too. Bell stopped trying to stare through her at the tower and focused his eyes on Aiz. He was still growling just as much. Bell, we will do it together. We will train and get strong. We will help each other get our revenge. Stay with me, Bell, you're not strong enough to fight Otter yet. He nodded at her, but still growled. She pulled him deeper into the hug and started to stroke his ears. Promise me. She whispers in his ear. I promise. He whispered back. He stopped growling, but was still very much shaking in anger. If Freya had been watching at that moment, she would have seen two souls, black flames entwining, burning as if one. Loki Familia stood and watched as Bell fought the Minotaur. That is not a normal Minotaur. Finn sucked on his thumb. Bell was fighting in human form right now, but Finn knew something was going to happen. His thumb was never wrong, it had ached something big was about to happen. No, it's not. Riveria agreed. It's far stronger than normal. High level 4, perhaps a low level 5. It has Otter's sword. Aiz said as she watched Bell fight. Otter must have trained it. It's fighting with experience, it knows how to use that sword correctly. I can only assume this is all Freya's doing. Finn was concerned. What was Freya thinking? Was she trying to kill the boy? Why? Bell was fighting hard, but the sheer difference in power between the human Bell and the Minotaur was obvious. Bell was fast enough to dodge most of the Minotaur's blows, but he couldn't land an effective hit on the beast. The Hestia knife was sharp enough, but Bell didn't have the strength to really penetrate the Minotaur's hide. He was only inflicting superficial wounds. It was a matter of time which of the two would tire out first. Bell mistimed a dodge and was caught by the flat edge of the giant's sword knocking him across the room. He rolled across the floor out of control and landed in a crumpled heap at Aiz's feet. He hadn't even noticed Loki Familia enter the room, but he saw them now. He looked up at Aiz. You fought well. I'll save you now. But his face was flushed with anger. Leaping up, he grabbed her arm. No! He changed form and let the rabbit rage descend. This kill is mine. He roared and charged the Minotaur. He dropped his weapons and charged in with claws and teeth. With his enhanced strength in this state, the tide of the battle turned in Bell's favor. He slashed relentlessly, causing deep wounds to appear on the surface of the Minotaur's hide. Blood began to soak the floor. This enraged the Minotaur and it managed to grab Bell as he failed to dodge in time. Holding Bell up in front of him, the Minotaur roared in his face and threw him against a wall. Bell, however, knew exactly what to do. He angled himself so his spring-like legs would absorb the impact and bounced off the wall, using the power to reflect himself back at the Minotaur. He shot off the wall like a bullet and landed on the Minotaur's back, trying to bite its throat out. The Minotaur thrashed around to throw the rabbit off and succeeded. Bell hopped down to the floor and his attack renewed. He was winning. The blood loss was making the Minotaur move more slow and sluggishly. Bell howled, knowing his victory was imminent, and leapt onto the Minotaur's face. Holding himself up on the horns, he pulled his head back and opened his mouth as wide as possible. Then he slammed his saber teeth down onto the beast's skull as hard as he could. With a rather sicking fleshy noise, Bell's teeth penetrated deep into the Minotaur's brain and it died, instantly exploding into black ash. Bell howled again at the top of his lungs, screaming out his victory. He was facing away from Loki Familia, having completely forgotten they were there as he had fought in his primal rage. Loki Familia started applauding. Bell span with a snarl and roared at them loudly. It was obvious from his eyes that all rational thought was gone. This wasn't the Bell in the pub warning people to stay back. This Bell was deciding if the creatures in front of him were a threat or worthy of being hunted. He looked ready to pounce at any moment. Aiz started walking towards him. Finn was worried. Bell was not in his right mind. Aiz should stay away. Aiz, what are you doing? She just held a hand up and said, "Don't worry." Step by step she slowly got closer to Bell, who started growling even louder as she approached. "Bell," she called gently and kept walking. "Bell, it's me." Once she's within striking distance, she stopped and held out her hand. Bell sniffed and a small glimmer is seen in his eyes. Still growling deeply, he managed to say her name. "Aiz," he growled. Aiz sat and patted her lap. "I'll stroke your ears." Bell approached her slowly, cautiously. He sniffed again. Then curled up with his head on her lap. Aiz stroked his ears as promised. She was beaming with pride at taming the rabbit. The rest of the Familia crossed the room and approached the pair. Aiz's smile was wide. "Isn't he cute?" Aiz proclaimed as Tiona and Tioni got near. She smiled at them. "Aiz, he has blood on his saber fangs. Cute is the last word I'd use right now." Bell started purring due to Aiz stroking his ears. "Oh." Tiona couldn't believe Bell's cute little purrs. "He's purring. It's adorable. I want to stroke him too. He's my rabbit. Get your own." Aiz snapped, genuinely angry at Tiona. "Isn't he the only one? You'll have to share Aiz." Aiz wrapped her arms around Bell, lowering her head and body so she was in between Bell and Tiona, protecting him. "No. My bunny." Bell finally passed out, mind down. Black smoke swirled around him as he returned to his human form. Welf stood by the fountain waiting for Bell. It was going to be their first plunge into the dungeon together, and Welf was rather excited. Welf didn't get along with anyone much. As soon as people heard his surname, all they would do was harass him about making magic swords. He had the same problem with his own Familia. They couldn't understand why he would waste his talent the way he did. He would argue and get into fights with them. So, he had been soloing the dungeon for a few months now, but that was risky and dangerous. He'd almost died quite a few times. Welf was full of energy and raring to go. Seeing Bell approach wearing his new armor, Welf gave a wave to get his attention. Bell waved back, then Welf noticed him talking to a small Chianthrope girl next to him, pointing at Welf. Lily ran up to Welf and started eyeing him up suspiciously. "Morning, Welf," Bell called out as he stopped, standing near the smith. "Sup, Bell, who's the small fry?" "Lily is not small fry. Lily's name is Lililuk Erda." Lily shouted at Welf, her eyes ablaze. "Okay, pleasure to meet ya, Lily." Welf just grinned at her. Does Master Bell never listen to Lily? Why did you hire him without telling Lily first? Well, his armor is really good. I have a contract with Wealth. Lily throws her arms up in disgust. Master Bell never listens. Lily doesn't care anymore, it's pointless. Bell thought for a moment. He hadn't told Wealth about himself yet and he couldn't show him here outside of the dungeon. He tried to see if Wealth has heard about him already. Rumors were already in circulation. The rabbit at the hostess with Loki Familia. Sightings of the rabbit man in the dungeon. Bell had heard most of them already, most of them just made him chuckle, but he wasn't happy about the ones that assumed he was actually a monster. Wealth, heard any rumors recently? Wealth shook his head. Nothing believable anyway. Though I keep hearing rumors about a rabbit guy. Latest one is he killed a minotaur in the dungeon. Seems pretty crazy to me though. Bell rubbed his chin. Well, it's actually 2 minotaurs in the dungeon now. You heard the rumors too? Wealth asked, wondering why Bell is even talking about this. He'll show you the truth in the dungeon, Wealth, just don't freak out when I do. Freak out? Wealth tilted his head in confusion. You'll see. Bell responded with a grin. Bell decided to have a little fun. They had reached the 10th floor and cleared a few orcs out of the way. Things were quiet for a moment. Wealth was on point, leading them towards the 11th floor, which was their goal for the day. Bell tapped Lily on the shoulder to get her attention. Lily looked up and saw Bell had changed. She then got her own wicked idea and cast her magic. Lily also changed into a were-rabbit, but retained her old clothes and backpack. Then she giggled quite loudly. What's so funny back? Wealth said, turning his head. Once he caught sight of Bell and Lily, he just stood there with his jaw on the floor. Something the matter, Wealth? Bell said in a deadpan manner. Lily just started giggling and giggling, looking at the surprise on Wealth's face. There stood Bell. Well, no. There stood a giant bunny rabbit with Bell's clothes on. Next to him was smaller, but still a rabbit in Lily's clothes. Bell groomed his ears and cleaned his whiskers. Wealth just stared. I guess that's what you meant by 2 minotaurs then. What are you, Bell? Bell grinned. I'm a were-rabbit, Wealth. He looked down at Lily, who started making fake growling noises at Wealth. Lily, however, is just being a tease. Lily giggled again and changed back to her normal self. Wealth's face didn't change, he was just looking at them both in shock. Lily couldn't help herself, she rolled on the floor and laughing. Bell went on to explain his race and what that entails, especially the danger of him going berserk. He also explained that twice now he has gone berserk, but it seems he won't harm people he knows, and that scent is very important. Lily joined in to help explain. Master Bell was so scary. Lily doesn't want to admit it, but when Master Bell pounced on Lily, Lily wet herself. Master Bell had just killed around 50 killer ants, moving so fast that Lily couldn't even see him. Then he pounced on Lily. Lily thought Master Bell would bite her head off, his growl was so fierce. But Master Bell smelled it was Lily and didn't harm her. Bell nodded at Lily's words. Not that I remember any of that. Aiz says the same thing happened with the Minotaur. After I killed it, I looked ready to attack Loki Familia, but Aiz says she approached me and I knew her. Apparently I growled her name and curled up on her lap, then fell asleep. Lily commented again. Master Bell did the same to Lily, smelt her, growled Lily's name, then Master Bell passed out. So we're friends, Wealth. I don't want to harm you by accident, so air. Bell scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Can I smell you? Wealth just laughed. Sure, go ahead. Weirdo. Wealth stood firm, despite the fact that Bell's massive saber teeth were now right in his face. Bell took a good sniff, especially of Wealth's hair, and after asking Wealth to lift an arm, one of his armpits. He stepped back, giving a firm nod. Gotcha. You mostly smell of charcoal and iron, but I have your scent now. Well, no surprise, I am a blacksmith. Oh, one last thing, don't try and touch my ears, you'll probably bite without realizing. Why would I touch your ears? He asked in confusion. Actually, yeah, it's only women that try and touch my ears, thinking back. Lily was pouting though. Master Bell won't let Lily or Goddess Hestia touch Master Bell's ears. Only Aiz Wallenstein is allowed. That surprised Welf. You know the Sword Princess? And well enough so that she can touch your ears? Lily laughed. Master Bell gets lap pillows from Aiz. His purring is adorable. You purr? Welf asked incredulously. Lily started giggling again. You should see Master Bell when he nuzzles Aiz's face. So cute. He purrs so loud. Lily is confused. This is the middle floors. Why are the Elmirages not spawning? The whole party was on high alert as this was their first time down this deep. The 14th floor should have been teeming with Elmirages, but they only came across the odd Minotaur, which Bell seemed to enjoy fighting, so Welf and Lily just let him. They are spawning, Lily, I can smell them. Bell answered her. But it seems they are avoiding us? I wonder why. Lily and Welf both stopped and stared at Bell. He frowned at them. What? Mr. I'm a giant rabbit wonders why rabbit monsters are avoiding him. Welf facepalmed as he said it. Bell suddenly had an uneasy feeling, like something was very wrong. Suddenly, one of Bell's legs starts hitting the ground rapidly as if he's having a spasm. Thump, 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 thump. What? Bell was rather confused. Rabbits do that to warn of danger, Master Bell. They could hear adventurers shouting and hordes of monsters approaching. It's a pass parade, Lily shouted, warning the pair. As soon as Goliath started to spawn, Bell changed into rabbit form. He needed the extra speed it would bring. Run! Bell screamed to himself. Run, 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 run! Goliath's fist slammed into the floor behind him as he reached the ramp leading down to the 18th floor. Splinters of rock flew out and cut Bell all over. One splinter sliced into an ear. The pain was immense, Bell snapped. Throwing Welf and Lily down the ramp, turned and roared. Arg! Screaming with rage, he launched himself at the monster Rex. Aiz had quite the shock. Suddenly, Lily, Bell's supporter and a red-headed young man came rolling down the ramp from the 17th floor. She ran over to Lily and checked her condition, but as she was doing so, she heard Bell's roar from the floor above. That was Bell's roar for sure, she had to do something. Turning, she shouted at Tiona and Tioni. Get help for these two. Send Bet too. She rushed up the ramp to the 17th floor as fast as she could. Upon entering, she saw Bell was in a rampage. Currently he had grabbed hold of Goliath's neck and was trying to bite into the jugular vein, but his teeth were not long enough to penetrate all the way through. Realizing his bite wasn't effective, he leapt from the Goliath and bounced off the wall, aiming for the giant monster's eyes. Bell was fast, but the monster Rex wasn't to be trifled with. It had anticipated the move and swung its fist at him, knocking him back across the room. As Bell recovered and went for another attack, Aiz called out to him. Bell! Aiz! He roared back at her, greatly surprising the girl. Bell was deep into a rampage, but there was enough rationality in him that he could acknowledge her. This made Aiz feel very happy. Awakened Tempest, wrapping herself in her wind, she joined the fight. Bet came charging up the ramp like a whirlwind. He stopped for a moment to observe the fight. Tisk, he grunted. Bell was holding up well, but in his rampage wasn't using his weapons. Idiot, he grunted again. He didn't really mean it though. Bet knew full well what it was like to lose himself to a rampage. He wondered what had pushed the young rabbit so far. He then realized where he was. Bell was only level 1. What the hell was he doing this far down in the dungeon? Aiz. He called out. Gimme some wind. Bet. Bell roared when he heard Bet shout. Aiz glanced at him for a second and threw a gust of her tempest towards Bet's boots. Grinning Bet shouted, "Here I come," and joined the fight. Goliath exploded in a cloud of ash, the magic stone falling to the floor with a clunk. Aiz had managed to inflict a deep wound on Goliath's throat, penetrating the skin, but not deep enough to cut the windpipe. Bell had taken advantage of this and had climbed up Goliath's torso with his claws to reach his neck and started tearing into the wound with his claws and teeth. The rabbit biting into the wound had distracted Goliath enough that Aiz had a chance to land on top of his head and strike straight down with her sword into the monster's brain, killing it instantly. They had both dropped to the floor next to each other once the creature had disintegrated. Bell was awake and growling as he scanned the room for threats. Catching Aiz and Bet by surprise, he suddenly pounced on Aiz, knocking her over onto her back. Bet panicked and started charging towards them. Had Bell really lost it that much? Was he trying to kill Aiz? But then Bet saw what was happening and slowed to a walk. Bell had pounced on Aiz, but he wasn't trying to rip her throat out. No, he was nuzzling her face. Bet just laughed at the scene. "He sure has the hots for you, Aiz. Never seen a war creature so affectionate." Aiz's giggling had only lasted a few seconds though. Bell's eyes rolled back and he collapsed on top of her, changing back into his human form as he did. Bet laughed more and more. "Where's an artist when you need one? Someone should draw a picture of this." Bell dreamed. It was an unhappy reoccurring dream he had been having for a week or so now. They had been in the Hostess of Fertility one evening and Lily had been teasing Bell about being the Sword Princess's pet rabbit. But that had woken a horrible fear in Bell. He loved Aiz, he loved her from the bottom of his heart, but that comment from Lily had broken him. What if she were right? Did Aiz care for him? Or did she just see him as a pet? As she was away on the expedition, he had no way to talk to her about it. The paranoia had grown more and more over the last few days. In the dream, Lily was saying sorry as she saw she had struck a nerve with Bell. She was trying to reassure him that Aiz did like him as a person, not just as a pet rabbit. But the seed had been sown and Bell became more heartbroken every day as he convinced himself that Aiz would never love him. The dream shifted. Bell was a small rabbit in a hutch. A blonde girl came to play with him every day. She would feed him and stroke him and play with him, but that was all. He was a toy in a toy box, nothing more than something cute for the girl to coo over. Put away every day and forgotten about. He always woke up very miserable after that dream. And unfortunately for him, that was the dream he was having right now. Bell started to wake up. Someone was stroking his hair. That's a bad sign, it means he's being woken from a mind down again. Had he rampaged? As he opened his eyes, his last memory hit him. Throwing Lily and Welf down the ramp to the 18th floor. He leapt up. Lily! WLF, he looked around. He was in a tent of some kind. They're fine, they are having breakfast. It was Aiz's voice behind him. He turned and looked at her. How are you feeling? She asked. Bell rubbed his forehead. He had a headache. He grimaced slightly as he replied. My head hurts. She patted her lap, where Bell's head had been just a moment ago. I'll stroke your ears if you want. Bell, however, shook his head with an unhappy face. He loved it when he stroked his ears, but if he was just a pet to her, he didn't want it. He felt like his heart was being torn in two. She was offering what he wanted most in the world, but if she didn't love him it would only be torture. Do you not want to? Aiz asked in an unhappy voice with a pout. Bell shook his head again, still frowning with unhappiness. He had a lump in his throat and was on the verge of tears. He couldn't speak even if he wanted to, it all just hurt so much. But, you love having your ears stroked, she said with a sad voice, pouting. I wanted to hear you purr. Aiz didn't know, but it was the worst thing she could have said. She had meant it affectionately, of course. Aiz didn't see him as a pet. She was confused how she felt about Bell, but she didn't see him as a pet. It was much more than that. Being around Bell, human or rabbit, made her happy. Bell didn't know what to do. All he wanted to do was get away from her right now. That last comment had confirmed it for him. She wasn't interested in him like he was with her, she just wanted to pet him. He felt like a toy. He ran, tears streaming down his face. He burst out of the tent, surprising Lily, Welf, and the Amazon twins who were waiting to see if he had woken yet. Quickly he disappeared into the trees, shocking everyone. Aiz had rushed after him, calling his name, but he vanished. Tiona had grabbed her and stopped her following him. "Let go of me!" Aiz shouted, wanting to chase after Bell. "Aiz! Calm down! What did you do to him?" Tiona held tight as Aiz struggled. Aiz gave up and stopped trying to wrestle her way out of Tiona's arms. "I didn't do anything." "Tell us what happened, Aiz," Tiona asked this time. "I offered to stroke his ears, but he didn't want to." Lily put her hand over her mouth. She knew what was wrong straight away and she felt horribly guilty. Bell hadn't been quite the same since that evening she had teased him in the pub. Lily kept trying to reassure him in the days afterwards, but once she had planted the thought in Bell's head, he had become quite depressed. "I said I wanted to hear him purr and he ran away." Lily had to say something, but she wasn't sure how. She decided to use anger and make it look like it was Aiz's fault. She couldn't stand the guilt, but she couldn't admit it either. "Is Miss Wallenstein an airhead?" she shouted. But that didn't prompt the response she expected. Tiona and Tioni just nodded at her. Lafia had noticed the commotion and had walked over to see what was going on. "Yup, she's an airhead all right." Lafia agreed with the twins. "What are you all talking about?" Aiz asked, rather confused. "Can't Miss Wallenstein tell? Master Bell loves her, but Miss Wallenstein treats him like a pet." "Like a pet?" Aiz tilted her head. "Yes," Lily shouted. "But he's not a pet. He's a boy." Aiz didn't understand. "But you treat him like a pet bunny rabbit, not a boy. He thinks you only care for him as a pet." Welf understood. He tried to give the male perspective. "Aiz. Most women don't believe this, but men's hearts are just as fragile." Lily just shouted HAH at Welf's remark, but he frowned at her. "How would you feel if you loved someone more than anything in the world, but they didn't love you back?" "I would be sad," Aiz replied. "Would you want to see the person you loved if they didn't love you back?" Aiz pouted. "No. That's how Bell is feeling right now. He loves you, but..." He glared at Lily for a moment. This was her fault. Right now, for some reason Bell thinks you only care for him because he's a rabbit. He thinks you're only playing with him, like you would play with a toy. Aiz pouted. She didn't mean to make Bell feel sad. "What should I do?" she asked. "That depends on how you feel about him," Welf replied. "If you don't love him, then leave him alone. Stay away from him. All you will do is break his heart over and over. If you do love him, or think you might, then just try and talk to him. Work it out together." He continued after a second. "But whatever you do, don't tease him. Don't string him along with false hope. I have seen several men destroyed by cruel women in this way. It breaks them, they are never the same again. First you need to know your own feelings, Aiz." Tiona joined in. "What do you feel for Bell? Is it friendship or is it more than that?" Aiz didn't know. She pouted for a moment. "I'm going for a walk," she said and just wandered away. Riveria had been listening quietly all this time. There was a brief flash of green light as she expanded her magic circle out as far as she could, searching for Belle's telltale signs of magic. Quickly locating him, she moved to find the boy. Belle sat and stared. He was at the bathing area and was staring out over the lake into the trees and cliffs that formed the wall of the floor. He wasn't really looking at anything, he was just lost in thought. Racked with despair, his mind just replaying his doubts about Aiz over and over again. He'd changed into his rabbit form now that he was alone. This was something he started doing every chance he could. He found he felt more comfortable in his rabbit body compared to his human one. It felt right, natural, as if it were his true form. Of course, Belle didn't realize, but he was right. Belle's rabbit form was his true one, his human one was just a disguise his race had evolved in order to survive the world. Riveria called out to him as she approached, but he just glanced at her and went back to staring. She sat down next to him and looked out where he was staring, but saw nothing interesting. "I know you're upset right now, Belle, but I have to tell you a few things about Aiz." Belle kept staring out into the distance, he didn't make any kind of response. Riveria knew he was listening though, so she carried on. "Aiz is an odd one. Rather unique. She's been very difficult all her life, but recently there has been a change." Still no reaction from Belle. "She came to us when she was 7 years old after she lost her parents to a monster." Belle was looking at her now. Good, hopefully this would work. After she lost her parents, even so young, she was just filled with lust for revenge. She didn't speak to us for months at the start. All she wanted to do was fight in the dungeon before she collapsed with exhaustion. Day after day, she was relentless. She did nothing but train and fight, fight and train. It was an entire year before she would even let me brush her hair. She was a wild child, every day I thought she would push too far and die in the dungeon. Understand Belle, she didn't even speak to people. The only time she would was when I told her not to train or go into the dungeon, then all she would do was scream she had to get stronger. Tioni and Lafia joined a few years later. Aiz started to open up a little, but not much. She at least started to respond when people spoke to her. Belle. I had never heard Aiz giggle until she met you. Not once. Before you, Belle, she didn't smile, she didn't laugh, she didn't even talk. Then one day, we find you in the dungeon and she comes back happy. I'd never seen anything like it. Since meeting you, she has been happy. She smiles, especially when she talks about you. Did you know that since you two started training together she's never been so happy? She talks about you all the time, how you improved your techniques, how you get stronger really fast. When she does, she smiles and her voice has joy in it, Belle. I never thought I'd ever see Aiz talk about someone the way she does about you. You don't know it, but you're the closest person to her in the world. She cares about you more than anyone else, and I mean that. She cares far more for you than she does me or Lafia or the Amazons. You even got her to be friendly to Bet. Belle, whatever you're feeling right now, whatever doubts you have, they are wrong. She cares deeply for you. She patted him on the shoulder twice and stood up. Oh Belle, have a bath before you come back. You stink. With a curt nod, Riveria turned and walked away back to the Loki Familia camp. As she wandered back to camp, Riveria saw Aiz, who was still out on her walk. As she walked past her, she just said, "At the bathing area," and kept walking. Aiz gasped as she understood what Riveria was trying to tell her and ran to the lake. As she approached, she saw Belle in the water swimming away from her. Not wanting to peep, but secretly really wanting to, she hid in the bushes and watched. Belle swam back to the shallow and stood up in the water. Aiz marveled at the sight, odd as it was. She'd only ever seen him dressed, human or rabbit. Now, she saw the full extent of his rabbit form. He had white fur all over his body, not an inch was uncovered apart from the soles of his feet and the pads on his fingers and palms. Every other inch of him was covered in fur. Apart from his rabbit head and legs though, he looked completely human, just covered in fur. She watched as Bell checked himself all over, then grabbing sand from the bottom of the pool, would scrub the areas where blood had dried into his fur. Soon he was gleaming white all over. Then to Aiz's surprise, which forced her to stifle a giggle, Bell shook the water from his fur like a dog would. Coming back to the shore, he slipped his underwear on and grabbed the small brush Aiz noticed he always had tied to his belt. He then started grooming himself, gently teasing out any knots in his fur. Bell had become quite strict about his fur grooming. He hadn't had anything to use to comb his fur except his claws until he arrived in Ororeo, and the brush had been one of the first things he had bought. It had taken him hours to get all the knots out of his fur after the journey to the city. Hestia had kept offering to help, but Bell wouldn't let her touch him. Finally he had done his whole body, except an area on his back which he couldn't reach. Then he just sat there and stared off into the distance, seemingly deep in thought. Aiz decided it was time. She doubled back through the woods a little, so it would look to Bell like she just arrived walking down the path. Not that she had been peeping at him for the last half an hour. She didn't know that Bell could sense when people look at him. He had known the entire time that she was there. She didn't call out. She didn't want him to run away again. She just walked and got closer and closer. Eventually Bell heard her footsteps. He glanced at her, but turned his head back to staring. He didn't know what to say. Everything was so conflicted right now. Had Riveria spoken the truth? He didn't know. Only Aiz had the answers he sought, but he was far too scared of the possibilities. He didn't dare ask. Aiz, also not knowing what to say as well as being a person of few words, thought of another tactic. She took the brush from his hands and moved behind him. Very gently she began brushing Bell's back in the spots he couldn't reach. She was hoping he would purr. Not because she wanted to hear it, but because it meant he was happy, and she liked it when Bell was happy. After a few minutes of gentle brushing, Bell spoke quietly. "Thank you." Aiz didn't respond. She just kept brushing gently. Aiz began to calm again as she stroked Bell's fur. Stroking Bell always made her feel calm. It didn't matter if he was human and she stroked his hair or if he was rabbit and she stroked his fur. Stroking Bell made her feel calm. Eventually, all the knots were removed, so she placed the brush beside him and hugged him from behind. Still, she didn't know what to say, and they just sat there quietly together. After some time had passed, Aiz finally spoke up. "I'm sorry if I made you feel like a pet. I care about you, Bell. Please, don't leave me." Curse of the Were-Rabbit Chapter 5. Bell didn't know what to say. After hearing Riveria's words, he felt like he had acted like an idiot. But a broken heart isn't a switch. It didn't heal instantly when he had realized the truth. The pain would have to be worked through. But now he just felt guilty for upsetting Aiz and stupid for letting his own doubts mess with his head. He turned to Aiz and embraced her. After a few minutes he whispered an apology in her ear. "I'm sorry, Aiz." That was all he could say for the moment. He was still awash with emotions he didn't fully understand. But he felt she deserved an explanation at least. He pulled back a little so they could talk, but still held her close. He tried to begin, but it was hard. "I'm sorry. It wasn't your fault, you didn't do anything wrong." He sighed. "A friend joked that I was your pet. She didn't mean it, she was just teasing me." He paused for a moment, trying to get his thoughts together. "I became worried that it was actually true, and because I couldn't see you while you were on your expedition, I thought about it more and more and..." He trailed off. "I got a bit lost in my head, I guess, thinking things that weren't true. I'm sorry." He looked down at the floor, not wanting to meet Aiz's gaze for the moment. "Riveria came to me earlier and told me about you." Aiz was curious, but let him speak. She explained. Bell paused again, thinking on her words. "She explained why you fight so hard. She said that she had never heard you giggle until you met me." Then in a quiet voice, "She explained that you care more about me than anyone else." Aiz thought about this for a moment. She knew Riveria was right. She had known the moment that Belle had run from the tent. All Aiz wanted was her revenge, to kill the one-eyed black dragon. Even if she lost all her familia and friends doing so, she would have her revenge. But the moment Belle had run from her, she had panicked. The thought of Belle not being with her, not wanting to be with her, was devastating. She was slowly beginning to understand how she felt for Belle, though she was still very confused. That end. Belle had started talking again. A few months ago, I was a normal human. Just a farm boy dreaming of being a hero. Then I wake up one day and I'm a rabbit person. It's been difficult to cope with the change. Then learning of my parents' death. He shook his head. The last few months had been rough. Finding out you're not human, it's... Belle didn't know how to express himself. Too many conflicting emotions were wrapped up in his words. But Aiz smiled at him. She had a secret she wanted to share with him. I understand. Belle gave her a confused look. How could she understand? Belle. I'm not human either. I'm a demi-spirit. Belle's confusion grew even more. What did she mean? A demi-spirit? How? My mother was a wind spirit. She suddenly stood and called out, "Awaken Tempest." Belle hadn't seen Aiz's magic before now. There had never been a scenario where they fought together while Aiz was rational. Even though she had used Tempest during the fight with Goliath, Belle's mind was far too gone to understand and was far too involved with the fight at hand. Aiz's wind wrapped around her body, green wisps floating all around her. She spread her wind out around them, causing a gale to buffet the trees and make them lean away from her. Then she stopped and smiled at Belle, who was still sitting on the floor with a shocked expression on his face. But Aiz, there is only one wind spirit. Aria, he said, looking at her in awe. Aiz looked at him sharply, almost a glare, although she didn't intend to. Belle had surprised her, that's all. How do you know my mother's name? The dungeon Ortoria. Albert marries Aria and they fight the black dragon together. But then it strikes him. Waldstein. Wallenstein. Aiz. But Aiz knew Belle had figured it out. My father, she said, and sat down next to Belle again. Belle tried to think, but all that he thinks is that was 1,000 years ago. I don't know what happened. Aiz tried to explain. I was only 7 at the time. The black dragon came and... She choked on her words, trying to hold back the tears. I woke up in Loki's arms 9 years ago. She won't tell me what happened. Belle draws her back into a hug. Thank you for telling me. It's okay, Belle. We can be, not human, together. After hugging her for a few moments, Belle decided to make a peace offering. You can stroke my ears if you like. Aiz squirmed with delight, and very soon, Belle was purring on her lap. Hand in hand they wandered back to the camp to find it was dinner time. There were a few knowing smiles as the couple walked together, but they were left alone and not teased. Riveria had been very specific about the punishments that would be doled out if people teased the pair. Mostly for Aiz's sake. She didn't want Aiz to lose the happiness she had found. She had specifically picked out Lafia and Bet and given them an earful. Lafia just sulked for the rest of the evening after stomping off, shouting, "Stupid human! Stupid rabbit! What even is he?" But Bet's response had surprised her. You don't need to lecture me, old hag. I ain't gonna tread on their toes. With that he had wandered off, not caring what Riveria had to say. The couple found the party in full swing and went to join their friends. Lily and Welf were sitting with Tiona, Tioni and Lafia, as the five had been together since Belle ran away that morning. Both concerned for their familia members and their relationship, there had been a lot of discussion about the pair. Though Lily mostly kept her mouth shut, knowing full well it was her fault that Belle had such doubts which caused the scene that morning. Tiona had been quite interested in Welf's comments about men's hearts. Weren't all men just driven by lust, wanting to Sleep with as many women as possible? Wealth had admitted that was true for some men, but not most. Those kind of men, women should watch out for. However, most men just wanted to have someone to love who would love them back. Most men just wanted a happy family. It was a male's instinct to protect and provide, their sex drive was just a way to achieve that. Tiona had found this all rather fascinating. She rather fell for Wealth that evening and tried several times to come onto him, but each time, he gently turned her down. After the third attempt, he explained he loved another. Frustrated, Tiona wanted to know who her rival was and was rather shocked when Wealth had admitted it was his goddess, Hephaestus. Bell was back to his normal self by the time they had returned, and it was clear the two had patched things up. Aiz had sat in his lap while they ate, a happy little princess, then she had laid in his lap afterwards while they all chatted, being her quiet self and enjoying Bell stroking her hair. Bell had stayed in rabbit form all evening. He preferred it and he needed practice being around people in that state. He had rather quickly got used to it, but practice made perfect after all. But that had meant Tiona had been growled at several times as she kept trying to grab his ears. Eventually Aiz had got annoyed and chased the Amazon around the camp, while Tiona giggled and laughed as she ran away. Later that evening, Bell and Aiz had snuck away for some privacy and had laid down together under one of the large trees. Not too far from the camp, but far enough they wouldn't be overheard. Laying in Aiz's lap, purring away as his ears were stroked, he stared up at the ceiling of the 18th floor and marveled at the sight. It was like looking at the night sky full of stars, but each star slowly winked out and was replaced with another. It was like a shifting sea of stars and was one of the most wonderful sights Bell had ever seen. "Beautiful," he said, gazing up at the ceiling. "What is?" Aiz asked. Bell smiled at her. "You." She ran her fingers down his cheek, then spent the rest of the evening giggling as Bell nuzzled her over and over. Wealth had leveled up after returning from the dungeon, and that evening he wanted to celebrate. Bell and Lily had joined him at the bar called Hibachitii, the Flaming Wasp. It was famous for its red mead, which Wealth rather enjoyed. It was full moon, so Bell was in rabbit form. He'd worn his disguise in the streets, he didn't want to freak out the public, but once he had arrived at the bar, he'd taken his hood, scarf, and goggles off. People were beginning to get used to him now, although the odd look still made him feel uncomfortable. They had cheered Wealth's level up and were discussing the black Goliath that they had fought on the 18th floor. A loud voice cut through the din. "Get this, some bunny just got famous overnight." The bunny was sitting right there after all. Bell looked over to see who was speaking. A prom adventurer in an expensive-looking uniform was mouthing off. Bell chuckled a little. Expensive uniform perhaps, but the bowl-cut hairdo made him look even more like a child than a prom normally did. That rookie sure got some guts. Don't care if he really is the record holder, it's amazing that people swallow all of his lies. I couldn't pull that act off in a million years. Anyway, I've heard he's extremely good at running away. That must be how he got the level up. He ran away from that minotaur until it collapsed from exhaustion. That's a bunny for ya. Quite the talent. One of Bell's ears twitched and Wealth noticed. Cool it, don't worry. Let 'em say whatever they want. Master Bell, don't listen to them. Bell, however, had already decided to play it smart. Don't worry, Wealth, Lily. I have to learn to control myself when I'm in this form. This is probably good practice. Bell carried on ignoring the stupid prom and thought of earstrokes from Aiz instead. That always calmed him down. It was a shame she was in the dungeon. Bell had wanted to invite her that night. He smirked to himself. What would the prom be saying if Aiz was here sitting on his lap? However, the prom continued. Oh, you know what else? The bunny joined up with two random pieces of riffraff. A washed-up Smith and some puny supporter. The party's so unbalanced I'm surprised they can even stand. I also know that his familia is led by some goddess not worthy of even the slightest shred of respect. You'd have to be pretty weak and stupid to join a disgraceful deity like that. Bell gritted his teeth, but forced himself to keep calm. If he lost his temper now, there was a good chance he'd kill everyone in the bar except Welf and Lily. Bell knew full well that if he allowed himself to rampage, innocents would be involved and at best he'd be expelled from Orario. At worst executed. He had to keep control no matter what. Welf, however, had enough, but he also knew full well not to make the scene violent. He stood up and walked over to the prum, then squatted so he was at eye level. "Are you dumb?" he asked, surprising the prum. "Tell me, little prum." He poked him in the chest. "Do you know why the war rabbits were hunted to extinction?" The prum backed off from Welf a little. "B, because they rampage. They go berserk." Welf nodded. "And right now, you're stupid enough to mouth off in front of one? Are you a retard or do you have a death wish? This isn't a bar fight you're starting. You set him off and the only survivors would be the two random pieces of riffraff he teamed up with." Welf looked up at the other 5 people the prum was drinking with and noticed they all had the same uniforms. Taking a guess that the tallest was probably the leader, he looked up and spoke. "You in charge of this?" Hyacinthus, captain of Apollo family, nodded. "Put a leash on this one. You've got morons on your team." Hyacinthus stood up with anger, pushing the table back as he did. "How dare you speak to me like that?" However, before he got a chance to move, a large slap sound was heard. Hyacinthus's head snapped to one side as he received the slap. He swiftly turned his head to work out who had done it when he found himself staring straight into Bet's eyes, who was now standing straight in front of him. Bet grabbed him by the collar and lifted him into the air. "Now you say thank you, Mr. Bet, for saving my life." W. Hyacinthus struggled in Bet's grip. "I said, now you say thank you, Mr. Bet, for saving my life." Hyacinthus just spat in his face. "Wanna be torn in half, pretty boy?" Bet slammed Hyacinthus into the floor as hard as he could, then he stepped on his neck to stop him getting up. "Know your place, weakling. None of you are strong enough to take him on. I have never seen such stupid weaklings as you." He looked at the party on the table, including the prum. "Leave. Now." He growled at them. The Apollo Familia members all scrambled to get out of the pub as fast as possible, falling over each other in their mad dash for the door. Bet picked Hyacinthus up from the floor and held him up by his neck. "Not you, though. I feel like slapping you around for a bit. You ruined my drink." Bet dropped him, but Hyacinthus landed on his feet. He was level 3 after all. Before he could react though, Bet slapped him again, making him spin around and fall to the floor. "Don't get up unless you want another." Hyacinthus was arrogant though. Despite the 3-level difference between the two, he stood up and tried to swing a punch at Bet. "Tisk baka," was all Bet said as he sidestepped the punch and returned his own blow, a punch to the gut. Hyacinthus collapsed to the floor, gasping as he was winded. Bet had aimed right into his diaphragm and shocked the muscle hard. Hyacinthus choked and struggled to draw breath for a few moments, his face going purple. "Want another?" Bet asked. But Hyacinthus, crawling on the floor, just held his hand up in defeat. Choking and gasping, he grabbed a table and pulled himself to his feet. "Leave," Bet said simply, and watched as the Apollo captain walked out of the bar, still gasping for breath. However, he had to pass by Bell's table. Hyacinthus was already very jealous of Bell. He couldn't understand Apollo's interest in the boy. Hyacinthus was the kind of vain man who would preen himself in a mirror every day to look as good as he could. Bell seemed like riffraff in comparison. He wanted Apollo's love for himself, but all Apollo did was talk about Bell recently. Hyacinthus was full of envy. As he passed by, with a fit of jealousy he screamed, "This is all your fault," at Bell. He grabbed one of Bell's rabbit ears and crushed it in his hand, catching Bell by surprise, who had just been laughing at the whole incident until that point. Bell's ears were very sensitive, and having one crushed by a level 3's hand was probably the most painful thing he had ever experienced. He didn't even have a chance to hold back. He twisted out of the grasp, causing him even more pain with an angry snarl, then bit down onto Hyacinthus's arm. The two saber fangs penetrated all the way through the man's arm, shattering the bones inside. Hyacinthus was lucky that Bell then withdrew the bite without shaking or tearing the man's arm off. Hyacinthus had no idea how lucky he was at that moment. Bell had been doing everything he could to keep his self-control. Hyacinthus screamed in pain and jumped back from Bell, his arm shattered, blood flowing freely from the two holes in his arm where Bell's saber teeth had cut into him. Bell just growled, his eyes bloodshot. Again, he did his best to keep control and not let the rage descend, but it was hard. His ear being crushed had really hurt, and it was still very, very painful. The table splintered as he gripped it. But it was too late. Hyacinthus's blood had hit his tongue. He couldn't stop it now. The bloodlust began to descend. Arg! Bell roared at the top of his voice. Shit! Cried Welf. It was too late now, and he knew it. Oh no! Lily said in a sad voice. She knew she would be fine, but how many people would Bell kill before he calmed down? She feared the incoming bloodbath. Fuck! Bet cried out, leaping towards Bell. Dungeon! Dungeon, get to the dungeon! Was all Bell could think as he stood and tried to run for the door. Oh no, you don't! Bet tackled him to the floor and got him in a chokehold. Hyacinthus ran, screaming in terror. Bet was shocked at Bell's strength as he held him down and compressed his neck with his arm. Bell was level 2, but it felt like he was struggling like a low level 5 would. It only took a few seconds for the chokehold to kick in though. Bet was compressing his neck hard enough to stop any blood flow through the jugular veins. Bell passed out after a few seconds. Bet released the pressure, but still held Bell firm. He would wake up in a few minutes as the blood flow returned to his brain, and Bet couldn't be sure if Bell would still be in his berserk state when he recovered. Quick! He called out to Welf and Lily. Wash his mouth out or he will just go straight back into a rampage. Gotcha! Welf replied. He forced Bell's mouth open and with a handkerchief soaked in mead, washed the blood from Bell's tongue and teeth. After a few moments, Bell woke and his eyes darted around as he tried to work out where he was. You calm now? Bet asked, still holding Bell, ready to choke him again if needed. Yes. Bell replied and went limp to demonstrate to Bet that he really was in control of himself. Thank you, Bet. It wasn't your fault, Bell. Bet replied as he gently let go of the were-rabbit. Still Bell stood. He wasn't happy with himself. I'm not sure what would have happened if you hadn't stopped me. The last thing I remember is tasting blood and thinking I had to get to the dungeon as fast as possible.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.